So, what's up, Sarah? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks to your recommendation, I just bought my first thing of runes, so I'm super excited about diving in this conversation. It's been a big interest of mine lately, and I appreciate you. You probably inspired me the most. So, yeah, the runes are the shit.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this. Like, man, they changed my life. That's like what really opened the door for magic in general for me, and just like realizing, like, oh shit, this stuff actually works was when I got into runes. So, hoping that'll be the case for you too, and everybody else.
What made you first get into the runes? Like, what inspired you? Because I never heard of them before I went to one of your classes. Whenever you taught a class on it.
Well, I mean, it was honestly kind of random. Like, it always been in my periphery. My first introduction to kind of like doing anything as far as like magic or anything esoteric goes was studying tarot. So I started studying tarot first. I studied tarot for probably 5 years before I even thought about looking at runes. And one of my friends was just like, in this exact fashion, like, hey, bitch, I'm taking a rune class. You take it with me. I was like, okay, sure. And I signed up with her and I started doing it. I wasn't really taking it too seriously. I was just like, okay, cool. There's like a lady giving a free class on some magic. I'm down. And she had us, we were supposed to buy runes, and I was a horrible student, so I pretended like I did when I didn't. And I was just coloring them on a piece of paper at that point. And we started with divination and learning just kind of like how to read them like tarot cards. And it seemed very basic at first, but she had us do this thing where we were supposed to take our rune and carry it with us for 3 days, sleep with it under our pillow, and record our dreams and how it popped up. And right off the back, it was everywhere. Like, there was a tree shaped like it, or it was on like a stain on the concrete, or in the dirt, or there was like a ding on somebody's car. It looked like a rune, and it was like I started recognizing the energies of that rune and everything throughout the day and in my dreams, and it kept going. And then when we got into studying the magical applications of it, we took each rune on for a week, and it was like, as soon as, she was like, okay, this week it's this, you're either like, yay, because your week's going to go great, or like, fuck, because you're about to get some real ass fucking shit thrown at you. It was really intense.
Oh man. Oh damn, that sounds interesting. Damn, that sounds wild. So where did the runes originally come from? Because I know you're into Norse mythology as well, right? That's the big backbone of it. So where did the
So,
runes originate from?
so according to the mythos, the runes have been in everything since the dawn of like time as we know it. So these energies of the runes basically represent all of the principles and energies of the world around us, all the different energies of life, all the energies of the cosmos are contained in the runes. So from the time of when you go back to kind of like the original creation of the cosmos, there was the void, or what they called the gap. And within the gap, there was nothing and there was everything. There was no noise, but there was no silence. And it was just kind of like this infinite nothing that existed. And from there were two realms that came off. One was the realm of ice, which was Niflheim. And then there was the realm of fire, which was Muspelheim. And those two energies, which was like the original idea of like a Titan god in Norse mythology. It was like the giant, and at the castle named Alhambla, which was formed. And so in those times, they kind of existed in the gap alone, and Adhamla like licked the ice and the salt from the ice to sustain herself while the milk that flowed from her fed the giant. And it said that like from that exchange, from that original life force flowing, was where the runes first came into being.
Oh.
Like with the very first energies.
Damn.
But the understanding of it kind of came long after that. So it was like after, there had already been like the first war between the ice giants and Odin, and when they had killed Ymir and used his body to create like the form of the world and all of cosmology. There's argument about, so the world tree, Yggdrasil, is what holds all of the realms into place in cosmology. And it's something that is present in this world, but supposedly, mortals can't see it, but it exists and it's there, and it's like this giant tree that runs through all the worlds. So, in order to gain the knowledge of the runes, Odin hung himself and sacrificed himself to himself so that way he could understand the energy of the runes. But what he actually did was, when he sacrificed himself to himself, he was getting not only a knowledge of himself, but a knowledge of all the energies of all of the cosmos. And those manifested in a way we can understand in the form of runes.
Ah, I see. So Odin, and I was listening to this earlier, so Odin was so fervently chasing wisdom that he sacrificed himself and gave up his eye in order to find the runes and learn the energies of the universe.
Yep. That was one of the first steps that he took. So that was prior to him getting the runes, was he sacrificed his eye to Ymir. Or not Ymir, I'm sorry. What's his name? Mimir. Very close names. Mimir. So Mimir was this giant who guarded the well of memory. So at the base of the world tree, there's all these different wells. Like there's the well of the fates, and then there's Mimir's well, which is the well of memory, and there's several other different ones. But he went on a quest to go find Mimir because he thought, well, if I could have access to all of the knowledge of things that have already happened, that'll be enough. Like if I can just remember everything, that'll be enough, So he went and he had to sacrifice his eye in order to get that knowledge, but, knowing all the stuff that had already been learned wasn't enough. He had to then go take the next step and sacrifice himself on the tree to get the knowledge of not just, what had been and what had been learned up to that point, but even what was outside of himself.
Ah, I see. Dang, that's deep. Okay. So, and I think that's the difference between looking at mythology, kind of like, the reason why a lot of people don't pay attention to mythology is because they look at it more from a historical standpoint instead of from a psychological or spiritual standpoint. Like these stories, kind of like you're talking about right now, are being played out today in every single moment of your life. And I think that was the most powerful thing for me to try to understand when I first got into Norse mythology and I started reading it. I was like, wow, as I'm reading this shit, it is like happening in my day-to-day life. It's wild. And it just gives you the color to paint in your reality. It gives you the color to paint in your own personal mythos. And I think that's the powerful part about it when I start getting into Norse mythology. Then I get an apartment, and I'm right next to a Hindu temple, and then across the street is Viking high school.
Yeah.
I just started reading stuff like 3 or 4 months ago. They're the Vikings. They're the home of the Vikings. Dulles High School, the home of the Vikings. It's wild. It's wild, man. It really is. So now with this, Can you also go through, since we're already on the topic real quick, would you also go through the war between the Aesir and the Vanir?
The Aesir and the Vanir both argue, one group wants to stop time, the other group understands that, like war and life and death kind of gives not concept, but context to life. So where one side, believes that, like, there should be, like, sex and birth and life and all the things that, like, we, like, cherish as mortals that makes the world, worth having and worth living. They're like, no, we can just all level out. Like, we can have paradise and we can all live in, like, a hippie commune and just be cool. We can just chill. Like, if everybody can just chill, it'll be fine. And then the other side's like, no, we need to fucking have, like, a reason to live. Like, how can you know peace if you haven't experienced war? And then the struggle goes on and on, back and forth. So the war supposedly ended and they found, like, this balance, right? And they exchanged hostages on both sides. So that's why Freya and Freyr can go live with Odin and the Asgardians and vice versa, and they send hostages to them too. So it's kind of like, through the stopping of the war and the hostage exchange, they found a balance. Like, okay, like, there needs to be times of peace, but we also understand that we need times of war. And so that's not something that I really looked at too much, just because, I don't know, I guess in my mortal mind, I've kind of just been like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you need both. You can't just have all-out war. Like, that's exhausting. But you can't just sit around all day, like, drinking coffee and philosophizing, talking philosophy.
Yeah.
What's that word you use? Philosophical.
Philosophical.
Yeah, that's Bobby's word. Being philosophical.
That was good, man. I was cracking up, man. He's a funny guy.
Man. It's like, without one, you never appreciate the other. It's that the duality kind of exists in a way, and that's something that needs to be reconciled, and through the peace, they reconciled it. It's like, in that mythos, in that story, they kind of, like, manifested and showed the different sides of the extremes, and through the reconciliation and the peace after the war, they balanced it.
Yeah.
Music and those words and, like, the sounds have as much power as the runes. So you're familiar with Galder, right?
Yeah.
So what the Galder is it's just basically the sounds associated with each different rune is a Galder. And
that's the speech.
Each sound sound has that energy intoned into it. So, like, for example, with the, like, we use the for thee and there and them and all of those things. That is associated with Thorizaz, which is, in a lot of ways, it's the hammer of Thor, but it's also, like, the vexing thorn. That has to do with, it can mean anything from, like, getting pregnant to poisoning somebody. Two of the same.
Oh, that's cool.
With, Galder, maybe, like, write a spell, but to, do something of that effect to somebody, you would recite words with a lot of the sounds in them.
That's cool. Okay. That's neat. So you're just linking energies through that word, linking the different energies and putting the emphasis into it.
Yeah. And on that basis, you could carve out a rune to do something, or you could write a poem and have essentially the same effect.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yep.
Oh, wow, okay. So it actually is changing your linguistics and how you communicate through symbols.
And in my mind, it can be just as effective in the English language because the majority of the English language is Germanic anyways. And if you go look at it, it's so close. Even when you try to read old translations, it's like you might see a word and then be like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Ah, I see. Okay, so then you're getting into like vibration and stuff. Then you're getting into like aligning with different vibrations through sound. Like changing how your brain is communicating and sending signals through the different sounds.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and does that gives you some interesting experiences, right?
Oh yeah, because I mean, even if you just get down to like the fundamentals of meditation and breathing techniques to induce altered states, you can do the same thing while intoning a Galder sound to experience the energy of a certain force. I think one more thing I would like to add to this video going in to it, and it's kind of like, I guess it could come off as a warning, but not so much, just making it like fair game. So when you work with the runes, right, or is external, you're dealing, with your own inner microcosm, but you're kind of attuning yourself to the energies of the macrocosm. So what they believe in is, with fates and everything, anytime you're dealing with the runes, you're reading fate. And anytime you make an action with the runes, you're potentially altering fate. So that is kind of like a basic fundamental rule of magic, but I think that scares people a lot because, it's like you hear like in Wicca, there's the rule of three, like if you do or you alter, it's going to come back to you threefold. It's very much that rule applies when you're working with the runes. So, for example, it's like acknowledged more heavily in these workings that if you should make a spell with the rune, like you are intentionally and knowingly going in and playing with fate as it is. Like you're playing with everything around you, like you're playing with the entirety of the macrocosm. So that has to be understood and accepted. So a lot of the times when people will make a decision to act, they do readings, if I do, if I don't, and then afterwards, what have I done, basically.
I see. So what's the best? So if you say you're messing with this, what would you say the best safety precautions are before like getting some runes and diving into this kind of magic?
I would say that learn the runes and get really familiar with the energies before you try to do anything that is going to play on fate, because then like it's one thing to use it to work on yourself, it's another thing to use it to try to manipulate your reality, because fate has a plan. You may not like it at first, but what seems like misfortune and the offset might lead to like your greatest blessing. If you go all willy-nilly trying to alter fate, well, you might get some serious fucking backlash that you're not prepared for. If you're prepared for it, well, then do what thou wilt. Otherwise, I would say kind of focus on how these energies are interacting with you and get familiar with them. And most of the time, I think people find that once you kind of understand all the energies there are, there's really not much of a need to try to alter things unless it's worth the risk.
Oh, I see. So so the fate is decided by, it says the Norns, right?
Yes.
The Norns. So can you tell me a little bit about that? I haven't really studied them much. I just know the Norns.
So there's 3 Norns that are most well known. Urdur, which has the Well of Urd. She's the one who has to deal with all of past and present. And their concept of reality everything that we can possibly learn about the past and the present are all intertwined. Like, it's one and the same. Like, everything that happened is happening now because it's still affecting the present. So that's one Norn. There's Verdani, which has to do with, you know, she is what is becoming. So it's kind of like, there's a little bit of a gray area deal with that. It's kind of like, if you don't take action, that's what's going to happen. Versus Skald, everyone's favorite, everybody knows Skald. It's what they say when they raise their horns, is getting basically what you deserve, what's intended, like your intention and your will manifesting. She has to do with that.
Ah, dang, that's cool. Okay. That's neat.
Yeah, so it's kind of like there's two possible futures, and one rules it, but the past and the present are all intertwined. And whether or not you like believe the gods to be real or external, when you kind of like start experimenting with the runes, it's helpful to kind of identify yourself with those stories and with those legends, particularly in the place of Odin. When you're working with this stuff, you know, and you're working with the runes, I think one of the lessons that people have to come across inevitably is there may have been a point where you could have prevented that car crash because you might have seen the car crash, you know. But in preventing the car crash, you would have prevented all of the things that you learned.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it once again. I hope you have a good night.
Yeah, you too. I'll talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.